All right, it's time for our next panel.
My name is Albert Copeland. I'm a lawyer from Birmingham, Alabama. My practice is general liability, but a focus in cryptocurrency and blockchain through formation and securities law.
My name is Sean, and Chinese name Hem Liao, and we're from Chinese, the open mining market in Shenzhen, and we are the definite center of the mining industry. For we cover the ranges of Chinese mining farms, and our customers include both Chinese and worldwide farms.
Hi, my name is Justin Wales. I'm the chair of the blockchain and virtual currency practice at a firm called Carlton Fields. It's about 400 lawyers across, I think, 12 offices around the United States. And we represent folks throughout the crypto and blockchain industry and have been since 2014.
Hi, my name is Peter Groverman. I'm an entrepreneurial attorney from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm also the CEO of the world's first B2B global platform and technology, bringing American healthy foods global.
Hello, my name is Leonardo Miller. I am a technologist from Miami, originally from Brazil. And my day job, I work for Visa. I'm not formally representing them here tonight, but I am passionate about data and Bitcoin, and I hope to contribute to the panel.
All right, so your first question. So Bitcoin isn't something that's legal in every country, and we know that. We've seen the issues and the hiatus that many countries and people have had to take because of this. So I want you guys to tell me, why is this a problem? You guys can start right here.
So, what is the question exactly? Can you rephrase that?
Why is the legality of Bitcoin, because it's not legal in every country, a problem for the industry?
Yes, so I'm probably the only guy here that's not an attorney, but that's fine. I believe that I wouldn't say that it's not legal today. I think that it's less the fact that it hasn't been regulated. So that is the problem, the primary problem, is the actual regulation of it to understand the definition of what would make it legal and what would make it illegal, rather than the fact that today the default is that it's illegal. I don't think it is illegal, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to transact or use the technology, so that's great. Now, how can we get regulators to define when it would be illegal and how? So that's the friction today that I think would be a great next step.
Yeah, so it's legal in the U.S. At least it's being started to be regulated here. It is not legal in Morocco. It's not legal, I think, in Indonesia, the Middle East. The UAE is mixed. There's some law there that says that, you know, it's not legal, but they just issued the first permit for a company to start doing an exchange based out of Dubai. So there's all these different questions across the globe that make it more technical and challenging, I think, for the industry to evolve. Because if you don't have consensus that what you're doing, in my opinion at least, for the industry, if you don't have consensus that this is a token is a method of currency, it has value. I mean, even still in this country, there's debates in different jurisdictions on its legality. But I think until we have consensus and say, hey, this is actual currency, it counts, then there's always going to be doubt. And I think doubt can breed just, you know, anything that can not good stuff. Oh, you got it.
There you go.
Right. So, like he just said, Bitcoin is legal in the United States. It's legal most places. Now, it may be unregulated in a lot of places, but unregulated does not mean illegal. I think one of the challenges in answering the question is, what do we mean by Bitcoin is legal or is not legal? It's, well, you can do a lot of things with Bitcoin. So do we mean the transaction of Bitcoin is, let's not say legal or illegal, say regulated or unregulated is the mining of Bitcoin, regulated or unregulated is having a custodial relationship with someone where I hold Bitcoin for them. Is that regulated or unregulated? If I'm using the Bitcoin blockchain for things that are non-financial, right? You can store like arbitrary data on the Bitcoin blockchain. I can do publications. I can use the Bitcoin blockchain as an authentication tool, utilizing like the lowercase b virtual currency to access that tool. Is that regulated or unregulated? And the answer is, at least in the United States, is that none of those nuances are being discussed at any real level by the state and federal regulators. So you have a system that's developed in the US where the federal government will view Bitcoin as property if you're asking the taxing authority, as a commodity if you're asking the CFTC. If you look at other types of tokens, that might be a security under the SEC. State regulators are looking at it as money when it's convenient for them to do so. Sometimes in different states that pass rules that say specifically that Bitcoin is not money. So like Wyoming's a good example, whereas Florida will view Bitcoin and Bitcoin transactions as money, meaning if I want to go and send $10 worth of Bitcoin directly to someone in Florida, well, that might mean that I'm a money transmitter in Florida. Whereas that same transaction happening in Wyoming, I would not be a money transmitter and I would not need those licenses. And that same transaction in New York would only be deemed a transaction like a money, meaning I need a bit license, if I'm actually being used as a third party to facilitate to others. So when you have all of those different types of relationships that have different regulatory schemes depending on where you are, and that's just in the United States, it becomes really difficult for big institutions, for institutional investors to really buy into Bitcoin or crypto as a long-term play and see long-term opportunities because there's just a lot of uncertainty. And it costs a lot of money to like have lawyers basically tell you that there's not an answer. And I think that's how like a lot of us make our money, is to say like, there's a risk involved, and the easiest thing for you to do is nothing at all. But if you're going to enter into a space that is a new technology having to be applied to old financial regulations, it's inherently risky.
Oh, well, I have to say that we witnessed a rapid development of this industry in China because we welcome all the customers from different countries. I met with several lawyers who have done mining for a long time, from about 7 years ago. At that time, it was about several $1,000s, and now he told me that he was waiting for the time for next year for it to reach it at about, he told me $80,000 or something like this. So he's holding his Bitcoins. And also lawyers from Egyptian, Iran, also Chinese lawyers. These lawyers, they have really long experience of mining, and some of them are my friends. And so it tells me that it is a signal that the mining, the legal problem is just a conception in your mind. So it depends on how you treat it, how you think of it, and for lawyers, for the legal, the organizations, they are still under considering how to face this problem, and they may also seek opportunities to develop and better the system for this, like New York City or somewhere in Kazakhstan, or I have no idea of Russia right now, but Iran is changing its attitude just the few days. Yesterday it launched the Chinese people in Shenzhen, our counterparts all hear the news that Iran changed its attitude towards the crypto mining of its electricity. Weeks ago, it said it is already banned the electricity of crypto mining because it has witnessed the rapid growth compared with the same period of last year. a growth of about 10% generated by the electricity cost of crypto mining. And the last several months, well, it's crazy. Many of our customers are from Iran, and we export uncountless miners to that country. And yesterday, it was released that it is legal. It is legal to use the electricity, so what a change. So let's see and wait.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think, like most entrepreneurs in the crowd, when you're running your business, the first question you ask is, what is the problem? Let's define the problem. And the question prompt was whether the illegality of cryptocurrency mining in a country is a problem. And with my fellow panelists, I agree with most of what you say, and I want to offer one different take, and that take is this. It's not necessarily a problem that mining is illegal in some countries. It's not necessarily a problem that mining is illegal in some states. It's not necessarily a problem that mining is illegal in some cities and municipalities. And why is that? It's not necessarily a problem because these local communities, they're on the front lines with these electricity and public service commissions, right? They're paying higher rates. You see in New York, that Plattsburgh, New York, they banned cryptocurrency mining. I think it's the only city in the US that did that. There's no state or federal legislation about this. But I think there is a voice to be said on the community level, on the state level, is how are we going to address mining? Like take Iceland, for example. A very great climate for geothermal, right? You come in, these companies have been coming in by the hundreds into Iceland, having their mining operations, and then what happened in 2017? The market crash. And so now you have all this energy consumption in Iceland, yet the market's disappeared. And so how do you address that problem? So it's a local problem, but it's also a geopolitical problem too. And I think I think in the spirit of the conference is decentralization, and we want to have miners everywhere, and I agree with that. But I think there's another side to. I think there is an argument for a measured approach, defining the problem and finding a solution to it.
Can I respond? Can I respond to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I'm excited that you brought that up because I think it forces a discussion of like two different concepts. One is what are we actually talking about, especially in the United States when we say mining, right? Or when we say making it illegal. In Plattsburgh, what they did was they didn't say mining is illegal in Plattsburgh. It said that in order for you to use, to set up a mining operation, you would need a special license, and they were not going to give out any licenses because they were having like a run on the electricity. Well, a lot of times when you read articles about like the destructive quality of mining and what have you, what they'll say is that Bitcoin is using all of this energy, but it's not creating that energy. This is energy that has already been created, and what people are doing is they're using it's like a worldwide global arbitrage of energy, right? So what's happening is that miners are saying there's too much energy being produced in some area of the world. That's causing the energy prices to be lower, and sometimes that's in Plattsburgh, New York, where you're not too far away from a power generator, and sometimes that's in Canada, and sometimes that's in like the Midwest. And what happens is that miners go and they say, I'm going to utilize that lower electricity, I'm going to create the demand. And as they create demand, what happens is that the price ends up becoming at a market level. So in a lot of ways, the idea, I view mining operations as actually a very pro-environmental thing, because it's identifying where there's an excess of energy that's being created and creating a market solution to that, one. And then two, if you look at, like, we have someone from Visa, right? If the goal of Bitcoin and the goal of cryptocurrency is to replace centralized payment systems, then you can't just look at the total energy cost of what it takes to maintain Bitcoin in a vacuum. You have to compare it to what is the total energy cost used to facilitate Visa transactions, right? And the entire financial system, if that's really the goal, right? So how much energy is being used to run the data processing servers that Visa uses? How much energy is being used to create the debit cards, right? There's a tremendous environmental impact that centralized processing services also have. And if we're going to like actually talk about how environmentally destructive Bitcoin is, we have to compare it to what is actually happening in a more centralized area. The other thing, and this is in the United States, is when we talk about mining, what is it really? Bitcoin is not money. Bitcoin is not a coin. It is just an agreed upon set of dialogue, really, that we as a community are saying that these types of information, these bits have some monetary value that we as a community are going to recognize, and there's a secondary market that may validate that transaction, right? Or that may validate what that transaction is worth. So it's us just coming together and managing ourselves as a community. Well, that's an association, right? Mining is validating transactions as part of a broader association. In the United States, you have an absolute First Amendment right to freedom of association. So it would be very difficult for a city or municipality or a county in the United States to say, we are banning mining, because all that's saying is that we are banning what? We are banning your ability to use your computer to validate information that a broader community wants to validate. It would not stand up to any kind of First Amendment challenge. That's not to say that you can't maybe do that in places that don't have a First Amendment. You might be able to do that in places like Canada, where there's not a First Amendment, or places like China, where they can ban anything, right, because it's authoritarian. But in the United States, at least, I think like we should, as a community, recognize that when we are doing something, when we are running these mining rates, when we are operating nodes, that is a core function of our ability in the United States to associate and to express ourselves. And I think that's an important thing to kind of take away from this kind of industry.
I think that was an excellent point. And, especially because you brought up Visa, and I made the note that I'm not representing Visa, and these are my personal opinions. But you did bring up a very great point that you were defining what a currency is, right? And I think that if we maintain the focus of Bitcoin as a currency of value rather than a payment system, that's when you highlight the benefit of Bitcoin as a currency to humans. Now, Visa, for example, transacts in many currencies throughout the world. And a currency like Bitcoin is no different than many other currencies that you have today, other than the fact that it's regulated by a government. So, okay, and you may have better knowledge on that. What I wanted to highlight is the fact that a currency itself is different than a payment system. It's very different, and maybe there's a second microphone, or we're sharing this one. Because it would be good if we can go back and forth on that. But so what I wanted to make clear was that Bitcoin as a currency has a lot of function and utility.
Sure.
And Bitcoin as a payment system is far from a good one, to say the least.
So I would take the position that Bitcoin is neither a payment system nor a currency. And I think here's my hot take is Bitcoin is an associational network that allows us, through the use of an open protocol, to build whatever we want on top of it, right? So I think it's an architecture. So if you look at all the things that you can do using the Bitcoin blockchain that are non-financial, right? I can use Bitcoin as a currency, but the point of the Bitcoin, and this might not be Satoshi's vision to
no, this is great, and sorry to, I just wanted to step in and say that I really see your point of view now, because I'm speaking from a technology standpoint, and you're an attorney, and I do see where the platform you're talking about is the blockchain, and I just wanted to divide that to say Bitcoin itself is a currency today, maybe not by definition, but that's what it's been used for. And the platform that is behind it is blockchain.
I'll disagree again. What I'll say is this is a problem with how we talk about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is both an uppercase B Bitcoin and a lowercase b Bitcoin. When I say uppercase B Bitcoin, I'm talking about the entire network that's being used to validate all the transactions. And how do I write something onto those transactions? I necessarily need to do so using the lowercase b Bitcoin. So if I wanted to, for instance, I can publish something onto the Bitcoin blockchain irreversibly, right? You have all sorts of examples of political speech and expression being put onto the Bitcoin blockchain, right? How do you actually get something onto the Bitcoin blockchain in an immutable way? You need the lowercase b Bitcoin. How do you make sure that this is immutable? How do you make sure that no government or no centralized system in the world can go and make a change to the Bitcoin blockchain? You need to reward the miners through this like game theoretical process, which is the Bitcoin currency. So I agree.
I think that's where maybe...
I agree there's like a currency aspect to it, but this is what Andres Antonopoulos says. He says, Bitcoin is not money, it does money. You can do all sorts of things on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, and when we as an industry start realizing how powerful this community is and how powerful this technology can be, if we start looking at projects like Rootstack, and we start looking at Microsoft, for instance. Microsoft wants to build an identity tool on the Bitcoin blockchain. Why aren't they using a private blockchain? The reason why is because when you are so decentralized that no government in the world can go and really take you down, because you have this game theoretical mechanism where miners who are validating the transactions are able to be paid independently for their work, it's incredibly powerful. I would agree that Visa can process a lot more transactions per minute than Bitcoin can, but it doesn't mean that at some point different processes and different tools will be built utilizing Bitcoin. I also don't think that every transaction in the world needs to be done in a completely decentralized way. Lightning Network is a great example of something that may be able to facilitate smaller transactions. But if I'm buying a house from you for $500,000, maybe I want to send that to you in Bitcoin. But if I'm buying a coffee from you, maybe I want to use Visa.
So that's a great point. Now, removing the second part of what you said, where I wanted to jump in was when you mentioned that Bitcoin serves as a distributed ledger and a currency. But then I think that when you mentioned that you need to have miners and reward them in order to create a distributed ledger, that's where I would disagree, because the distributed ledger part of Bitcoin itself is inherently free. And this example you see in other blockchain technologies like the Tangle that is in the DAG, where the transaction is actually free and you can post to the distributed ledger immutable, as you said it specifically, for absolutely free, removing the currency aspect of it. And
I would disagree that those work the same way as Bitcoin.
We're technically out of time, but I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to answer one more question. All right, we kind of ran out of time, guys, but I'm going to give them the opportunity to answer one question really quick. The question is going to be, where do you see the mining community in 10 years? Bitcoin just turned 10. Tell me really quickly what you think where we'll end up.
Oh, in 10 years. Wow.
10 years.
Wow, I can't make the prediction, but I can tell that I really want to divide it into several dimensions. For it is a clue that the things are changing. It is develops according to the law. First, there is a technology arising, a new technology, and we can't change it, and we can't drop it at any time in the 10 years. We can't ban it. That is impossible. Whatever happens, it will keep changing until it grows to a new degree. So in 10 years, there are, well, Bitcoin has a birth from 10 years ago. So let's see how it develops. In these 10 years, it is growing and bring many people from businessmen to freedom of their wealth, and they can enjoy investing miners. You know, we originate from investing we study the trend, and we study which point we should put money, and especially last several years, we start from investing ceramics or China or mobile phones. You know, along this road, we can finally come to this mining industry, and for about 5 years, and so when it comes to the regulations, no certain regulations happens. You know, in Hong Kong.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we don't have that much time. Can you pass the mic down?
Okay.
I apologize.
I'll be brief with a very quick story, a comment, and then pass to Peter so we can close. So as a lawyer, I'm going to limit my answer to where we will be in 10 years from a legal perspective, in the U.S. at least. And the story is this. So I run a local civic group in Alabama. That's where I'm from. It's the largest blockchain cryptocurrency interest group in the state. We have a great turnout. And so, but every single week, these people come, my friends, and they tell me, because they're laymen, they'll tell me, what's going on? I have these companies. When's the SEC going to have some guidance or clarity for their rulings? Like, I just want to know whether or not I can form this company. I have all these hurdles. And they keep asking me, when's it going to happen, Albert? When's it going to happen? And my response is this. Maybe from a non-lawyer's perspective, you wouldn't understand this, but this federal agency, like most agencies, this is a very intentional approach they're having. This gray area. Oh, we're not getting guidance. Well, guess what? That's on purpose, okay? Like, it's a slow burn. We're going to wait for case law to develop, regulations to unfold, right? We're going to have press releases from Commissioner Clayton. We're going to have little drops of, public speeches. We're reading the tea leaves, and that's on purpose. That's a kind of poke and see strategy. So in 10 years, it's going to take a while to have that kind of clarity, because Congress has to act. And the second way is through enforcement strategy, which we've seen, which maybe companies here have had. And I'll end on this note, then pass to Peter, is that as far as 10 years from now, I think we'll have more clarity, case law, regulations. We'll understand, be lower barrier to entry. I think state governments will have incentive programs for miners through green taxes to get them in, to fast track them. So I think it's a good future, but my one piece of advice is this: just be patient.
So I was on the founding team of Venmo. Venmo launched 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there was no law, there was no regulation. No one was sending anything over phones or anything. Bitcoin, it was just an idea. Today, last year, I think, don't quote me on this, Venmo processed $200 billion of transactions. So 10 years from now, where's Bitcoin going to be? Who knows? I do fear quantum computing. I think quantum computing is a threat. It could also be used to help develop crypto, but it's something that we should all be vigilant about, because it's within 10 years. It's going to happen. And it might not be Americans who do it. So that's interesting. But 10 years from now, the mining community, man, I hope everyone has the ability to mine and take part of the success that this industry is seeing today.
Did you want to add one more thing? I have 1 minute.
Sure, yeah. I would agree with everything you said. We're going to get more clarity. From a mining perspective, I'd say here's what my fear is, what the mining community looks like in 10 years, is that it's completely centralized. And I think what you're going to see is that the economic incentive for an individual to try to mine is already incredibly low, and it can only get lower. So what you need, I think, is a perspective change where individuals realize that the reason why they are doing anything they are running a node themselves, why they are mining or contributing to some mining pool, is not for purely financial reasons, but because they are trying to maintain a global, worldwide community. I think that's the healthiest way that this technology and this industry to grow. But I think we're already seeing like a tremendous centralization in the manufacturing of mining hardware, and also with mining pools. That scares me, and I think contributes to maybe some difficulties in how the technology grows.